Okay, we left off on assessing students' writing, and I will try to get through this quickly so that we can finish up the lecture. Okay, so review work that they have already produced, as mentioned earlier. Just gather work samples, and then that can provide some insight on the type of writing they're producing, what topic do they like to write about, is there evidence of a theme? Are they able to organize their thoughts? What is their sentence structure? So, again, a writing piece can provide a lot of information. Holistic scoring. So, one score based on overall impression might be compared to an anchor or benchmark paper. This kind of scoring is common in a classroom and in large scale assessments. Again, you're producing a single score, which is an overall judgment about the quality of a written product. And again, comparing it to other pieces, but to compare it to other pieces, you have to actually gather some writing samples. So you want to produce some exemplars. You would want to create or have a sample that would be a low, medium, or high based on whatever terminology that you're using. And then you would use those papers to guide the scoring of the other papers. Now, if you're doing holistic scoring, you want to make sure that you have a clear sense of what exactly is a high quality piece of writing. So a rubric would be very helpful in that case, and there's a sample rubric on page 113. Moving into analytic scoring, the whole piece judged in terms of subcomponents, scores and points awarded for each subcomponent, and then totaled. This can help teachers tailor instruction to particular aspects that a student may be having difficulty with. So again, the teacher attends to a specific writing skill and you're given a score based on that component. I like this one because you can see what areas the student needs help in. Instead of an overall global score, here you're isolating skills. So again, holistic and an analytic is different approaches and they both have their pros and cons. Observation checklist evaluates product but also examines the writer at work. So again, you're just observing the product, but then you're also looking at the student as they work through the writing process. And there's an observation checklist on page 517. But whatever kind of scoring that you use, make sure that you know how you're going to score that paper. Make sure those expectations are clear to the student. And also, please make sure that you are examining it closely, critically, and you're examining different components because you want to make sure that you can provide some kind of diagnostic viewpoint on what they're having difficulty with. And then there's student self-evaluations, which I also like, and this can even be started at a very young age. I used self-evaluations all the time in first grade. Obviously very simplified, but it's very good to get students used to looking at their own papers and evaluating it. That way they know what to look for, and when they're writing over a period of time, they start to evaluate it subconsciously. Okay, so as with anything, there are limitations of observing students' writing. Some students are anxious about spelling and only use words they know how to spell. Students might use resources in the room, the word wall, dictionaries, the person nearby. So I've actually had that a lot in first grade, which is not a bad thing, but I have to keep in mind when I am reading their paper, do they really know how to spell that word or did they get it from the environment? Lastly, or if a student is absorbed in getting their ideas out, they may not pay attention to spelling and make excessive errors. So just things to consider when you are observing students' writing. Okay, now we're on to observe students' reading. Students' reading and spelling are related but not mirror images. The processes differ slightly. As they get older, this is definitely the case where they differ. But I feel when they're younger, they are related and almost mirror images. because it can give you really good insight on their phonemic awareness and their phonics, or their alphabetic principle. In reading, words can be recognized with many textual supports, so reading ability lies ahead of spelling ability. Spelling is a conservative measure. If students can spell a word, then we know they can read the word. Doesn't work the other way around. Conduct running record and observe for miscues. So these are just things to consider as you're observing your students read. If students substitute rabbit for bunny, you know they're using contextual cues, but not sound symbol correspondences. So you actually might see a lot of that with students, substitutions happening, and they may make sense, but again, they're relying on the contextual cues, not sound symbol correspondence. Okay, spelling inventory. So you are going to be administering one in your next session. Recommendation is to do it 3 times a year with a regular classroom of students. Consists of list of words specifically chosen to represent a variety of spelling features or patterns, or at increasing levels of difficulty. So you will notice that with Words Their Way, it starts very basic with CVC words, and as it goes down, it gets more challenging. So you'll see consonant blends, long vowels, digraphs, and you'll see there at the end there'll be more multisyllabic words. Again, the test is looking for what they know about the patterns and different features of spelling. Examine the results of the assessment for the 3 functional levels. Okay, 1, what students do correctly, their independent level. What students use but confuse, an instructional level, where instruction is most helpful. What is absent in students' spelling, a frustration level where spelling concepts are too difficult. So in class, one of my students knows how to spell CVC words, so that would be at their independent level. However, there was some inconsistency with the long vowels. So here is where I would want to start instruction with the long vowels. I would not want to go beyond that because that would be at their frustration level. So I would have to go back to where there were some inconsistencies and start instruction there. All right, so this is just a page out of the Words Their Way book. If you need practice scoring or if you need any help, please let me know because I have the book and I'm not really sure how many of you do have the book. I know if you can do a Google search, there's actually a lot of information out there about Words Their Way. So here a teacher or a sample shows Greg, Jean, Reba, Alan, and Mitch and how they were spelling the words. As mentioned earlier, look at how it's CVCs and short vowels, moving into long vowels with blends right here. We have digraphs, we have different long vowel variants, and then we go into the multisyllabic words. Okay, so here we notice Greg had the initial and final, so he's at the early letter name, alphabetic. We have Jean, who got the final and initial, and the short vowel, except with ship. Notice how she does not know that the SH makes a sh sound, and she got the vowel mixed up. So here we notice Reba, she got down pretty long, and then right here we have some confusion with the long vowels. Over here we have Alan with bright, shopping, so noticing those suffixes back here, serving. So you kind of want to start where they're making the most errors. And Mitch, way down here, let's see where he made that mistake. Seller, okay, so here he's pretty advanced, so we would study roots and final syllables. So basically you would administer a test to a group of students and then you would group them based on their needs. And so here's what the research says. According to Cunningham, students who learn to look for patterns in multisyllabic words will be better spellers and decoders. Students learn word meanings from their reading, and both context and morphology are thought to account for a lot of their vocabulary development. Successful decoding occurs when the brain recognizes a familiar pattern, or if no familiar pattern exists, it searches through store of words with similar patterns. So our goal is to get our students not just looking at letters in isolation. We want them to recognize patterns, and that's why word studies can be a very valuable thing in your classroom. Because as you can see, what the research says really helps with decoding, because they're not just looking at those isolated letters. Just think about how you read. If you came to a challenging word, you're looking for patterns, and that's what we want our students to do. Interventions focus on polysyllable decoding have been highly successful. All right, so interventions that you can do for those who are having difficulties would be strategies that are listed in Words Their Way, again with the word study. Provide explicit explanation, modeling, think alouds, and practice. Teach students to ask, do I know any other words that look and sound like this word? 2, are any of these look-alike, sound-alike words related to each other? Teach useful prefixes, suffixes, and roots. I'm right here with my students right now. I'm teaching them, if they know how to spell mat, then they should know how to spell sat and cat, and we're really trying to instill them looking for those patterns in words. All right, so our session objectives. We went over the development of writing and spelling. We reviewed some of the diagnostics. Actually, this is more of in class. We did not do this. Actually, we will have discussed that in class as well. And with our lunch. Those who set out to remember every letter in every word will never make it. Those who try to spell by sound alone will be defeated. Those who learn to walk through words with sensible expectations, noting sound, pattern, and meaning relationships, will know what to remember, and they will learn to spell English. So again, as I mentioned earlier, knowing every letter in the word. So the goal is to have our students move to where they're noticing patterns and relationships. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Next time I will try to make it shorter, I promise. These are getting kind of lengthy. All right, and good night.